I thought it would be interesting to talk to you because you're going through identity crisis after identity crisis.
Yeah.
But also I think it's really interesting for you because you are seeking out a northernness in specific.
Yeah.
I feel like at the moment.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's a weird sort of position, I guess, because I am actually northern.
Yeah.
But I feel like, because I don't particularly sound northern accent-wise,
Yeah.
and it's been a kind of, I don't know, I feel like when I was a child, getting deep,
It's alright, it's like therapy, babe.
because, I mean, I've got an identical twin. So growing up, there was obviously always a weird identity thing of like, because we also are quite similar. It's not like other, you know, like you do get some twins that just fucking hate each other. It's like they're barely even.
The evil twins.
Yeah, they don't really interact. But me and Harry were like proper twin. Like it's never bothered me, but it has been a thing. I kind of go back and look at my work, and I can kind of see patterns and things that keep coming up, and identity is one that's just always coming up.
Yeah, and I feel like your work's like, it's a lot about your identity, but a lot of it is about like identity in like as a thing in itself, as a separate from you.
I think it's something, like I'm quite interested from both a kind of academic sense, but like I am interested by identity and how it functions. Like I look at like a lot of my work looked at like symbols and sort of signage and links and all these kind of connections and sort of subjective viewer projecting onto things, which I think is sort of, especially with the sort of twin identity thing, I think is tied in. I think there's always been this kind of other people projecting an identity onto me, because usually if they know Harry, they're projecting Harry's identity onto me, which for the most part is basically the same thing, so it kind of worked out. This kind of your own sense of identity, and then how people perceive that, and this kind of, if people perceive your identity as different to how you perceive it, that's quite interesting to me.
And because you look at language as well, and language is so much of that, how you project might have, you know, different receivals from other people.
Yeah.
And so that you look at like kind of costume change, don't you? And
duality has always been like a really big thing in my practice, and I think looking back it is because of this kind of twin thing. Like I had a sort of revelation a few years ago where it's like all my work is super focused on some kind of duality, and I think that is based on always having grown up in a duality of being a twin. Like I've always had this kind of second channel, like stream of, you know, like people getting to know Harry as this weird information stream that connects to my information. Like this kind of actor and character duality is really interesting to me. Like this idea that you're an actor as a person playing a character, and there's this viewer identity kind of thing of suspending disbelief and not seeing the actor, and kind of a good actor acts a character so believably or whatever, to the point where the character is all that you see. You know what I mean? Like this detachment.
So where's the northern work, the northern identity crisis come from? What's the duality?
Yeah. So I mean, I've like the twin thing. I've always, even when I was a child, had this kind of weird northern thing because I think because both my parents, so like my mum is northern, she's from like Prestbury, which is where she's from, and her upbringing was like very posh, like quite not upper class, but pretty posh. So she did like pronounced speaking and all that kind of shit.
Elocution lessons.
Yeah, elocution lessons and shit. So in my household, I don't think I had any kind of strong northern accent, and I don't know if I just didn't have any friends or what, but like there was always I've always had a very diluted northern accent. I think more so now. Like when I was a child, I was still sounded pretty northern, and like my town has a particularly, I think that's the thing as well, is that my area has a kind of weird northern accent. Like it's sort of in the general Mancunian kind of accent, but it's like because I'm from Stockport. And then I think combine that with my weird parenting, like accents. I never really had a particularly strong northern accent, which in my area, there was a big, massive focus on like, it's kind of a classism, but like a weird classism. So like, to be seen as posh would be very negative. It's really hard to explain, it's a very subtle thing, but like to be posh was generally to be bad. And then to be too far the other way, didn't really have a term. I guess people would call them chavs.
Chavs, yeah.
Would be also negatives. And because I would pronounce words, because I've always really liked words.
Yeah.
And we go back to the linguist thing, so I was a little fucking dweeb, and I'd just be like, I'm very fatigued. When I was like,
That's literally me.
one of those.
That's literally me.
I was one of those little assholes, like, that's very bumptious of you, and everyone's like, oh, fuck. Because, like, I mean, I'm incredibly middle class. Like, I'm the most middle class. I've eaten a lot of courgette.
Yeah, I think there's a very different class thing up north, basically, than in the south.
That's something that this north-south kind of thing has been, I think, sort of started my path down this northern identity thing again, because I always had this kind of like, I'm posh, trying to be more northern.
Yeah.
I had a realization, I think part of the negative part about being posh in the north was a kind of, posh is also analogous to like southern.
South, yeah,
so
totally.
Going back up north, you know, and people are like, oh, you sound southern.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and it's this weird kind of angle, but yeah, London is interesting.
In York, I get like that I'm posh because I live in a nice house, and my mum has a library in the house, and
it's pretty sick.
I study in London and I do fine art, and my accent's pretty northern but not super northern, and then here I don't think I have ever and will ever be called posh in my entire life.
This is what I want. One of the big things I want to talk about. So this weird rigid class structure and my understanding of it, because it was such an inbuilt thing, like I'm middle class, blah blah blah. That has been completely fucked since moving to the south. That was one of the like first things I noticed, this kind of north-south divide, is I have absolutely no grasp of a kind of like, because I think in the north I was so used to this weird structure. Coming to London, like I didn't know that a level of like wealth existed.
Oh my god, totally.
Like it just did not. Like the fact that I remember in halls, one of the first like freshest taster events, I met like 3 people that went to boarding school. And that was crazy to me because I didn't know that boarding schools were like still a thing. Like same. I don't know any boarding schools. So like there's this whole new level of wealth that I didn't know existed. And it's completely blown. So it's difficult because like I'm trying to get rid of this kind of inbuilt classism, but I still find myself trying to position myself, like where do I stand class-wise? And it's like
it's an impossible task.
I'm really trying to stop thinking that way. But like, my parents' house at the moment in the north is a nice house. Like it's not fucking massive, but it's a pretty nice house. Like they upgraded a few years ago when children left. And what is mind-blowing to me is, in my area, that's a pretty nice house. Like it's a good house. Like it's a fancy house. But I looked at the rent, and like my rent last year was more than their like mortgage payments. So like there's suddenly this really weird fucking thing where because and that's the thing as well, is this realization that London is so fucking expensive. Like it's kind of bothering me, I think, because I've been thinking about what I'm doing next year, which is at the moment moving home up north. I got quite annoyed because I was thinking, not annoyed at anyone, but like annoyed at just the way that it works, in that I am at a slight disadvantage purely because my parents live in the north. So if I'm trying to be in the London art scene, if my parents say we're from Surrey or whatever, I can move home but still access this kind of London art scene. I'm going to try and come back to London, but there is this kind of, I feel like...
how are you going to afford it?
Exactly, I'm going to have to go back up north and say I feel like people don't understand the North, and I feel like people, even if they're genuinely trying to understand the kind of cultural differences, I feel like people don't, or I've had struggles with when I'm talking with some Southern people about breakdown, they don't seem to kind of get it. So I was massively ranting at Zoe a while ago about educational inequality from north to south, because that's been something I've been thinking about quite a lot. And I was talking about the angle that, even though in Manchester there are museums and art galleries, there's like 4, and I mean there's small ones, but like big institution kind of things. But then you get to London, you've got the British Museum, you've got all these fucking massive institutions.
Yeah.
And we were talking because when she was at school in Dorset, she would go on school trips to London quite a lot. There's such a higher quality of these kind of cultural things that just doesn't exist in the north. Like, Manchester is alright, but it's fucking tiny in comparison. And there's this inaccessibility because, for finance reasons, you could do a sort of scheme like, we're going to distribute cultural elements across the UK, or like add funding so places like Newcastle, Sheffield, Manchester, fucking Yorkshire give more funding to start up more, cultural things. But there's no money for that. And then also, if there was money for that, people in these areas would probably reject it. But I know in my area, people wouldn't like it because they would just see it as like, well, I can't fix the fucking roads.
Yeah.
And there's all these things. So it wouldn't be popular, and they're not going to do it. But then there could be giving a monetary fund to northern schools to subsidise trips to London, all this kind of thing. I do feel, especially in my area, probably the same with you, art in particular was a kind of odd choice.
Or for me in York, I feel like York is just the like most middle class person ever think of. The art that is there is a hobby.
Yeah.
It's not a career choice. So.
Manchester has actually got a pretty good growing like contemporary art scene, but like where I'm from and growing up, obviously when I was like 15 living in Stockport, I had no concept of like Manchester art scene and trendy underground shit. So like my exposure to art was pretty much entirely Manchester Art Gallery, so just pre-Raphael I work in fucking Lowry paintings. I like them, but I just am so sick of them. And pastiche village fate paintings of canal boats. I mean, also in my little microcosm area, there was I think a quite heavy inbuilt masculinity kind of thing. I don't know how much this is just general UK, how much this is northern, how much is in my area. But there was a big kind of, for men or boys, doing art was particularly like unless you're doing it and you tell your friends, I'm going to do graphic design.
Which is so strange because there is such an advantage to be like men in the art world. Art world's a patriarchy.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it might be tied into this kind of class thing, this kind of posh working, get a job kind of thing. Yeah. Because I think a lot of it, especially more for boys, I feel like in my area there was pressure. I think it's self-inflicted pressure, but it was kind of a patriarchal pressure. To become like I need to get a job. So art, especially in the north, is not a reliable job. So I think that feeds into this. Why would I do that? I think it does discourage boys in the north from doing art because of all these kind of factors, and the fact that there is not that many boys in art as well. Like, if none of your friend group are doing art, and especially because there is this kind of built-in sort of patriarchy, oh, fucking gay, like, people are going to be dissuaded, and then it's sort of a cyclical problem. Is a assumption, a view, I guess this is fair to show's view of the north as this weird homogenous, like, the north is not just Manchester on a, you know what I mean? Like, there's a misunderstanding, I think, that is quite damaging, where people are like, oh, I know the north, I've been to Liverpool, I've been to York. But then, especially in the northeast, I feel like people, when people are talking, they've never been to fucking Sunderland, they've never been to probably even like Sheffield or whatever, like, which is not the northeast, but you know what I'm saying. It causes divides, and I think it causes potential friction, and it builds on this kind of north-south divide thing.
And I think it is, I think it's important to clarify that when we talk about the south, it's because of what London has done for the south.
Yeah. That's
so a lot of the south that we're talking about and labelling is London, or what London has done to its surrounding areas.
Yeah, that's probably good. That is a good thing to shout out. I'm kind of interested to see if HS2 goes through, because I read somewhere that it's going to make the journey from London to Manchester 40 minutes on the train. And this article is saying it's going to put Manchester in the London commuter catchment zone, which is fucking wild.
That's crazy.
So I was just thinking about this the other day, and it's this crazy thing where I feel like a lot of southern people would view that as like, oh, fantastic, that's great, or it's good for the north. But I've also seen criticism from the other side, from northern voices criticizing that because it's not going to empower Manchester or other cities. All it's going to do is draw more people into London and grow London into this, what it is now, which is oversized, overpopulated, kind of overvalued. I've seen calls for, instead of a train connecting the south and the north, more trains between the northern cities. And these kind of separate, like, satellites which are kind of disconnected. And I feel like it causes, like, physical disconnection does cause this kind of problem. Because, like, I know loads of people that have never been to London, and they have no concept of London. So then, and they don't have a concept of the different kind of cultures and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, like, that is another thing that's probably worth talking about, is there is a higher lack of diversity in the north, which I feel like... which causes issues, and I feel like it causes more of a misunderstanding. Like, I mean, going back to the educational inequality thing, I feel like a lot of policy is designed for London. And I feel like, I mean, I do joke about it, but I am actually quite into this sort of northern powerhouse idea politics kind of thing. There is a different set of demands and there's a different need, and I feel like it's not represented. I mean, like, I'm kind of cautious to go here because the statistic is misused for kind of racist, weird reasons, but the statistic a few years ago where white northern boys in the northeast were the least likely group to go to university across like the entirety of the UK. I'm cautious to use it because people use that as some kind of weird like race thing of like, oh, we're actually more oppressed. But that's a misuse of statistics. It's just because it's 98% white, whatever. So obviously I think that misuse of those statistics does damage that, because the key thing of that is more northern boys or like northern people in general are less likely to go to university, and that's ignored. A lot of people don't want to move to London because they know if they move to London, it's going to be...
have no money and it's going to be
They're going to have no money. They're not going to be able to afford to visit home. Yeah. It's a shit time ahead of me. So like people don't want to move because they're not going to know anyone. All their friends are back north, and all their friends back north won't understand, especially if they're going for like an art thing. I'm cautious to paint this picture of the north as being poor because I feel like that's another... people try and project onto the north and homogenise it into the north. They have this weird super working class, like everyone's fucking listening to Oasis, fucking northern soul music, everybody.
Actually, it's just like York and streets with bunting and like
it's village fates and fucking canal boats. I fucking hate Park-Live because I've never been either, but around Park-Live you suddenly get so many twats in Manchester just wearing bucket hats and being like, oh yeah man, they've come from like Wilmslow and they're like, oh fucking yeah, love Stone Roses, do a lot of cat and pass out of field. There's no fucking like youth clubs, there's no youth programs, because that's another thing as well. I feel like in London there's a lot more government schemes and government grants and stuff for this kind of trying to youth culture. I think probably because there's more of a kind of, like gang violence and all that kind of stuff in London, it makes sense that they're going to be like, we need to provide something for youth. But in rural northwest England, there's less incentive, or there's less... It seems like there's less of a need, I feel like, to politicians in London. Also because they've never been to weird rural north. They don't see loads of people fucking sitting around bored as shit. So it encourages it.
Or even, not even rural, but like in York. York is so renowned. It's the same thing there. And you're right, people get bored, and I think there's a really bad drug problem in York. And you're right, it comes from...
It's a lack of things to do, it's boredom.
It's boredom, it's being middle class and having spare money. And it's not, and no one paying attention to you because you're from York and it's nice, peaceful,
and there's nothing
medieval city.
There's even stuff like there's just nothing to do. And then, it feeds into this people being bored and people fucking stealing shit from Wyvale, the garden centre, and just smoking weed in the field. And you're not gonna, if you spend the last 6 years convincing yourself that you're
that's
not good at school, exactly, and this is what life is. You're not going to be like, I'm going to move to London and become an artist. You know what I mean? It creates this environment of, I don't know. There's all these things, and I feel like it's underlooked at, and I feel like it's it's negative, and it causes negative
Yeah.
views, and it feeds into racism. You know, it feeds into all these kind of problems that is just not addressed because it's. I feel like the people making policy decisions are completely detached. They're too far away
Yeah,
in
yeah.
London, and then it pisses me off then when I come, and it builds this resentment as well. I think it feeds into this like.
Yeah, well, we've just been pitching about this
Exactly.
for this other.
Exactly, like it builds into
Yeah,
this
yeah.
resentment. London is so overpopulated and so like house value, and then you go to like Liverpool or like Stockport or like, and there's boarded up shops and houses and burnt out
Yeah.
houses and shit, and it's just like, why not fucking try and distribute people
Right.
better across the UK? Like I feel
It's
like
the small place, isn't it?
yeah, that's the thing. It just feels so inefficient or like
Yeah.
stupid that everyone feels like for art stuff you have to come to London, but it's like
Yeah.
why not go to Glasgow or like establish other cultural hubs like
Mm.
alternatives.
That probably should, after this very long time of talking, and we have kind of touched upon it. You are a Northern artist in the south.
Yeah.
After all this.
For now.
For now. So how? And amongst other things, I'm not reducing you to a Northern artist in the south. Amongst other things, in this broad sense, how do you feel like you're represented in mainstream art institutions, and if you are, and maybe in some ways you feel like you are, and in some ways you feel like you aren't? And I need to check that this is still rolling. Yeah.
I feel a bit weird because I think it goes back to this duality identity kind of thing. Like, I feel weird because I am a white man and I'm a middle class white man,
Yeah.
so I have got this kind of privileged position
Yeah.
that I do
Of course.
take advantage from that kind of thing. But at the same time, my northernness, I feel like, does disadvantage me,
Mhm.
and because I will have to move home and I will be not represented in London because I
Yeah.
won't fucking be here.
Yeah.
And I feel like any time I haven't seen any kind of like it's northern artists, but I feel like it would just become this weird a London fucking son of a banker trying to put on this cool show where he's expecting
Yeah,
lots of
yeah.
fucking drug addict northerners to come in and
Yeah.
paint pictures of Stella cans and you're right man, I love fucking Oasis. When I was talking about the northern stuff, it just immediately went to this kind of, I guess, this sort of classism thing, you know, like, oh, it's a working class hero kind of thing, and it's like, that's not what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
trying to pretend that I'm some kind of working class northern, I'm trying to represent
Yeah.
weird fucking dweeby white guys from middle class areas of
Yeah,
the north,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, but I feel like it was immediately, oh, this is like a working class statement thing, and it's like, it's not that, it's more complex than that. You
Yeah.
can't- the north is not just this weird working class pan thing that's entirely fucking Manchester's 98% of them. You know what I mean? Like, I feel that's another thing as well. Like, if there was a Northern exhibition, I feel like it would just be
Yeah, they wouldn't be from, you
No.
know,
no. There's
Scunthorpe.
yeah, it's going to be entirely people from like Manchester, Liverpool, fucking probably Yorkshire. Like,
Yeah.
there's not going to be
Leeds.
There's not going to be anyone from like Whitby. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's going to be.
I love this. Right, I'm going to go on a little bit of a me tangent, but bear with one
That's
sec.
been me for the past 2 hours.
Well, that's the point of it. But like, so I became aware after a bit of casual dating that the Asian half of me was being like sexually fetishized.
Yeah, you were.
And I became aware of that.
Yeah.
But before I became aware of it, I realised that I played up to being this like exotic woman. And then I realised that was, it was dehumanising. I didn't like it. And as I grew up, I realised that's what was going on.
Okay.
I was being racially fetishised. But I've just realised, like literally in very, very recently, I do the same thing about being Northern.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, you know, you're this, and I date a lot of boys from London because I'm in London, so they're, you know, London middle class, not York middle class,
Which is fun.
right? And it's this fun quirk that I'm from the north, and I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like being like. I'm talking in a sexually fetishized, but also
Having a fun time going,
generally fetishized.
The fucking search.
Because I'm from the north, and it's a fun quirk to be down here.
I feel like that feeds into, I think that the reason that's so prolific is it ties into this kind of Northern Pride thing. So like when I mean not recently because I'm become a lightweight, but when I used to drink a lot, it was part of, I remember in my foundation there was a guy from like the south and we were like hanging out and went for drinks after this thing, and like he got a pint, and because I was bored I got like a pint and like fucking 2 shots of vodka and just pounded that shit. And he was like, oh yeah, you tech, whoa, Northern, he's crazy, he's drinking so much. And I was like, yeah, that's right, bitch. I can drink loads. And because it tapped into my Northern Pride thing of that's right, I can drink more than you. But
me too.
at the same time, it's problematic because it's building this like, I'm just performing this kind of, I'm fun Northern, well, I'm going to get fucked, pass out in a field, which I did, but that's not the point. I didn't even know Stockport had an art gallery. It has an art gallery.
Really?
I didn't know it had one. Like I feel like it is a shame. I would like to see, because it is so seen, like art, especially for boys in the north, is seen as such a not an option that I feel like it is a shame. And I feel like, it's just, I don't know.
Anywhere where people feel there's the amazing thing about Northern Pride is people are aware of their Northern identity, and imagine the work that could come from that.
It could be genuinely interesting. I feel like it'd be underrepresented and then immediately fetishized as like this kind of fun, woo, I love Oasis.
Right, and that probably is a good time for me to ask you to show your work,
nice.
If you wish.
It is inspired by, for me particularly, because my town is really, there's a fucking canal going right through it, and as I mentioned, it does have, it's a notable canal, it has loads of locks and stuff. It's like the symbol of my town is like a canal boat. It's like a big thing, and I remember growing up there's a big influence of mills in my area. But they're all disused now because there's no funding to fucking turn them into anything, so there's always massive mill buildings, but part of that was part of my growing up. So canal boats have always been like a big symbol for me of my home, and then coming to London I'm trying to kind of reconnect with Northernness or like my home in contrast with it, and part of that was bringing back this kind of symbol, and it, as I mentioned, it reminds me of like sort of village fete kind of things, like I can see shit watercolour paintings of canal boats, so I'm kind of going for kind of pastiche styles. I mean, it wasn't intentionally like a pastiche style, but I paint quite loosely, but this one in particular I was less bothered by scale and stuff, because it was more of a kind of, it was meant to be super subjective, and I quite like how it's kind of dumpy and cute. And it was sort of an interesting thing as well, because there's a canal outside, which has been weird, and that's another thing I guess about this kind of representation thing. Any time people have seen it, they're like, oh, it's the boats outside, and it's weird because I'm like, yes, this is technically a painting of a canal boat outside, and there's canals across the UK, but for me it's a very distinct northern symbol. Like I can't see canal boats as anything except for really northern, I guess sort of industrial northern kind of shit, but like, so it's a canal boat. There's 2003, which was, at the time I've kind of abandoned it because it was a shit idea. At the time I was dating things, trying to give it some kind of archival validity. So it's almost like it's, instead of just a painting of a canal boat, I'm trying to capture the idea of canal boats into this sort of emotional archive of building blocks or parts of my identity that build up this northern stuff. I'm trying to categorise and catalogue my northern identity, and part of that is my genuine experience and memories of canal boats in my head. So it's a nice canal boat.
The Tate do an exhibition about northern artists, and they say we want this. How would you feel, and how do you think it would be seen?
I think I would be happy with this work, because this work is very much about me being northern, and it was from a position of wanting to express a northerners. So for this in particular, I would be quite happy about it. I mean, the Tate, it's the Tate, but I would like, it's the same thing how I felt about the Turner Prize being all video work, because I really like video work, and it's something I've been doing, and I've always really liked video work. So as much as I hated the fact that it was the Turner Prize trying to be cool with
Right.
video work, whoa!
She did it all on a smartphone,
Oh,
guys. We all got a smartphone in our pockets.
My art mum's like, whoa, video art. I liked the fact that it was at least showing people
Yeah.
and putting video work. So as much as I don't really like the Tate, I would be pleased that at the least they're bringing this kind of
Yeah.
northernness to a southern art gallery. And this piece I would be happy with because it is very northern for me. If it was a work that's more about my twin identity or performativity or saints or Icarus, whatever the fuck I'm doing, I'd probably say yes because it'd be quite nice to be in the Tate and, you know, look at my CV and maybe I could get some money. But like, I would be a bit annoyed if it was like Northern art and then my work has nothing to do with me being Northern because I don't want to be Northern artist. I want to be. I think this was a sentiment expressed by, you know, the other people you've interviewed that I've seen, but like, I wouldn't want my work that's not Northern to be included. I would include it because I'm cheap and I would like exposure and money, but like, and I've got a massive ego, but like, it would grate me a little bit because it'd be like, this isn't Northern work, this is just English artwork maybe, or like, this is just artwork, it's painting, it's not Northern painting. This is Northern painting because that's the point.
Yeah.
Other work, I'm just Northern, I want to...
You want to paint?
Yeah. As much as it would annoy me to be like, oh, it's a Northern artist, look at this Northern artwork, isn't it crazy? And it's not anything to do with the Northern.
Yeah.
It would, at the very least, it would be showing Northern work or Northern artists. So as much as it would annoy me that it would be in this frame of their Northern artists, as long as it's actually, at the end of the day, it's still showing Northern artists, and maybe if people saw Northern artists, they'd maybe take Northern art more seriously, or might be inspired, like, oh, this Northern art's pretty good, maybe I should go to Manchester, maybe I should go, you know, fucking Leeds, maybe I should go, you know what I mean? So I guess it would probably be a positive thing, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think we can stop there.
Thank you. You can
It
edit it
was.
down.